Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to our webinar today. We'll get started in just a few more seconds, letting some final people join in. Please feel free to say hello in the chat. I know we've been looking at our list of attendees here, but please say hello, introduce yourselves, let us know where you're joining from, and we'll get started very shortly. Having a little bit of a computer issue, but we should be all set to go. Hello, Jason, welcome from Puerto Rico.
Awesome.
All right, sure. Well, we won't waste.
All right.
All right. All right, well, we won't waste too much time here. Please continue saying hello and introducing yourselves while I launch into my little spiel, and then I'll turn it over to Ricky and Radar so that we can get started with the main event for today. So hi and welcome. My name is Heather Grant. I am one of the community admins here at the Maintenance Community by Upkeep. Thank you so much for joining us in our webinar today. If you are not already a member of the Maintenance Community Slack group, we would love to have you join us. We will send the link on how to sign up into the chat shortly. Today, I have with me Ricky Smith and Radar Hunsinger. Thank you both for being here, for taking the time to do this presentation for all of our community members today. The recording from today's session and all of the slides you see here will be available in the Maintenance Community Slack tomorrow. Ricky and Radar are both also available to answer any questions in the Slack group. So if there's anyone else you know who would benefit from hearing more of their expertise, either from this presentation or any of their questions, answers, comments in Slack as well, please feel free to send the replay of this webinar and an invitation to Slack their way. Then final piece of housekeeping before we get started today, you'll notice your cameras and microphones are not turned on. So what you'll want to do if you have any questions for Ricky and Radar, or if they ask you guys any questions to answer, please use the chat feature on the right-hand side of your screen. You can send questions throughout the presentation. Let me know if there's any technical troubles or anything like that going on. And I will be keeping an eye on that throughout the conversation, and then we will reserve time at the end to answer any questions that come through. That's all for me. Thank you everyone again for joining. Thank you, Ricky and Radar, and I will turn it over to you guys.
All right. Thank you very much. I want to welcome with me today Radar. He's a world-renowned expert in MRO, and him and I have been good friends for many years. You want to introduce yourself, Radar?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Glad you made it here on a Monday evening. I'm Radar Hunsinger. I'm currently the corporate MRO manager for Great Lakes Cheese. We have 8 facilities across the United States. I manage about 120 lines. And I think I have last tally about 110 maintenance techs and then maintenance planners and all that. They're all under my umbrella. So glad to be here today. I have about 35 years of doing this, so anything I can do to help you, I'll be there to help you.
All right. Thank you, Radar. I'm Ricky Smith. I've been doing this a little bit a little bit longer than Radar. Maybe close, but a little bit longer. I'm excited about this session. Hopefully you'll get a lot out of it. All the sessions that we host, a lot of people have came back and given us feedback, and they love it. So the more we can give you, the more it'll help you, but it also helps us too, because we can learn from each other. Also, let you know the slides are on my website, so you'll see that later, and I'll show you where you can go to download it also. But the recording may be better, depends on what you want. Okay, so buckle up. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes,
perfect.
sir.
So welcome, everyone. This is everything you want to know about a proactive maintenance storeroom, but you were afraid to ask, okay, by Radar Hunsinger and Ricky Smith. I want to thank the sponsors, Slack community. Heather, you want to tell them a little bit about Slack and the maintenance group?
Sure. The maintenance community on Slack is a space of over 3,500 maintenance professionals and maintenance and reliability professionals and tangential industries as well from all over the world. We have live conversations, asking and answering questions, connecting you all with some of the industry's greatest experts. We do events every week. We have Ricky doing an event every week, as well as some other experts joining us. And we have a big event coming up next week, the Career Development Fair. So be sure to check out the maintenance community to learn some more.
All right. Thank you. So what is a maintenance storeroom? Everybody has a different terminology, in my opinion. Well, not everybody, but some of them do. A maintenance storeroom is a storage area for maintenance parts, repair parts, and operating supplies. This is just the standard answer for it. What is a maintenance storeroom? Known as MRO. And one thing it doesn't say here, there's a lot of things we have to know about the storeroom, and that's what we're going to talk about today. That doesn't show in that one bullet point. So it stores parts and supplies for future use to avoid prolonged downtime, while could ultimately lead to a plant shutdown. Then the objective of the maintenance storeroom. The storeroom function is to manage the inventory investment and provide the needed parts and components for equipment repairs and support the objectives and goals of the organization. So the whole thing is support of that. And a lot of places I go to, they don't see it that way. It's a storeroom being really the true support for, the reliability we're getting. So the objective of the storeroom to provide the right part of material at the right time and like new condition to maintenance. The reason why I put like new, because you may be surprised. I've been in the storerooms where, they got used parts. Like there's a motors. There was 3 motors in this one plant I was at not too long ago, and they never been rebuilt. They were taken off of some machine somewhere, and no one even knew where they went. But all I know, they had used them in the storeroom. They also were hanging. They had V belts hanging off of a loop rather than being rolled up. So what does that do? I mean, these belts have been laying up there for a long time. It starts to pull down on the cords in the belt. It starts to weaken it by doing that. So it's just surprising to me. Oh yeah, and used fasteners in the bolt bin.
Hey, Ricky, they just don't have to be used. They could be something that has sat there for 20 years.
That's right, exactly, and rusted. So look at the storeroom. Radar, tell us a little bit about that picture on the left. What is that?
Well, the picture on the left is something that people very seldom see. The bottom left picture, that is vendor managed inventory or vending machines that are used at a lot of facilities where you can put specialty tools in or any items that are frequently used, but you still want them checked out, but not necessarily up in your parts. It's down in the shop. You will see flammable cabinets there. You will also see spill containment on your oil. But what I'm looking at, those 4 beautiful pictures, you very rarely see at a facility because it really doesn't look that way. That's blue sky world right there, folks.
That came from one of your facilities, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I thought. The big thing about this, having the right part material at the right time in like new condition, that we have what we call the minimum inventory we should stock. A safety stock could be lower than that. Why is that? Because the safety stock says we always have it. We always have it in there. So we got to have enough time when you say minimum level to go to maximum level. We got to know what point do we reorder so we can fill it back up to maximum level before it runs out. This min max and the safety stock. Safety stock, I tell people, all biggest thing about it is you should never have to take it out of stock. That doesn't mean you don't rotate parts, but it means we don't ever take it out. And a lot of times we have large horsepower motors, may surprise some of you, but we have very large horsepower motors, but no one ever rotates the shaft. So what happens? It's sitting on a pallet and the earth has vibration. So that those bearings are doing this the whole time.
Yep.
So it sits there for 5 or 10 years. We put it on now, instead of lasting 20 years, it lasts 2 years. What happened with that? The way you're supposed to do this is it should be on an interval or a PM. And I used to have my storeroom attendant do it. Rotate the motor shaft 1 1/4 turns, and on my very large horsepower motors, 500 horsepower and above, they were rotated every 30 days. Anything less than that, we did it every 60 days or 90 days, depending on the size of it and the criticality of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the mission of the maintenance storeroom? Maintenance storeroom is to enable equipment reliability through effective storeroom management process. So I ask you now, how effective is your storerooms? You know, one to 10. Anybody got a 10?
Anyone feels though they have a really good process and a clean storeroom? Well, let's back up. How many here actually have been in their storeroom lately?
Our fill rate is 95.05%. The closest I've seen is at J&J, or a couple of responses that have come in so far.
Yeah.
William is in there today.
Excellent. The reason why I say that, and I kind of jested, because sometimes the storeroom is a forgotten entity of the reliability aspect of the maintenance program. We want the storeroom to be there, and when we need them, we really want them to be there. But if we don't need them, it's like they're the forgotten son or child. It's like, oh yeah, we better call them to dinner too. So that's why I asked how many have been in the storeroom to see how you're doing. Go ahead, Rick.
One thing we have to look at too is, to me, is we need to have a maintenance program. I was talking about on shafts and all, so we should have a PM program in the storeroom.
Mm-hmm.
In the storeroom, attendants could do the PM, rotating
Mm-hmm.
shafts, or whatever that is that we have to do, because there's a lot of things that we may have to do from a storeroom. All right, let's move on. So world-class benchmarks, maintenance benchmarks, stock, maintenance, repair and operating supplies with inventory value. Okay, so basically what that is, so it's maintenance, repair, and operating materials, MRO value. It's the current book value of maintenance, repair, and operating supplies in stock, including a consignment, vendor managed inventory, including the value of MRO materials at all storage locations, including satellite and or remote storeroom locations, where or not that the materials included in the inventory asset accounts or have allocated a pool of spares. So if we look at this world-class model, this comes from Alcoa Mount Holly, and that's the reason why Alcoa bought this plant. It was Alumax Mount Holly. Alcoa bought the plant to turn around all their plants worldwide to make them more sustainable, and that's what they did. I worked at that plant. That's one of the places I started my career. I learned a lot from it. But if you look at this typical maintenance cost as a percentage of replacement asset value, okay, I got that. 3.5% is typical, world class 2 to 3%. That's a lot of difference in money, but that's to go down to the parts, okay? So the maintenance material cost, replacement of asset value. So maintenance material cost must include material in storeroom stock plus materials in other locations, maintenance shop floor, plant floor, etc. Typical 1 to 3.5%. Now look at world class, 0.25 to 0.75%. So what let's just say, if we're looking at if the amount of money we're spending, in typical organizations, let's just say it's 220,000. Okay, and I'm taking this number, and now I'm looking at 220,000. What's world class spending? 48,000. A lot of difference. The money is being wasted because we're not having a truly proactive effect on not just reliability, but our parts, managing them properly. So the estimate of value of unofficial stores in the plant, even if they're not under control of the storeroom, and even if they're not on the books, include estimated value for stock material that may be stocked at zero value because of the various maintenance management system or accounting, whatever that is. I mean, it's just whatever the accounting does. It does not include raw material, finished goods, packaging materials, and related materials. So in this, where this comes from is from the SMRP metrics and the SMRP best practices. So definitions are everything to me. Without a definition, you have everyone's opinion. Plan work. Plan work is work gone through a formal planning process to identify labor, materials, tools, and safety requirements. This information is assembled into a job plan package and communicated to the craft workers prior to the start of work. So where does the storeroom fit in that? Well, the storeroom fits into this because when the planner plans a job and those certain parts are required for the job, those parts should be pulled from the storeroom and kitted in a special area. The reason you don't keep them in the storeroom is because In the middle of the night, if we have an emergency, someone's going to pull that. The next morning, that may be a priority one job, and no one even knew somebody checked it out of the storeroom the night before. So it's important to kit them. When I was a maintenance supervisor and a maintenance manager, I had a locked kitting area, and I also put a cage over the top of it because I had guys that like to climb over it in the middle of the night to try to get something out of there. So I would lock it, and I was the only one that had the key, okay, because I wanted to make sure we start work in the morning, our parts were there.
Hey,
Ready
Ricky,
work?
yeah, Ricky,
go ahead.
Before we go any further, I want to be clear. The storeroom and the planning department work hand in hand in parallel with one another. There's a great synergy there, and you can order parts against a work order, receive the parts against a work order. But if we're actually doing FIFO, because I got this question the last time we did this, was, hey, if we're getting all these new parts in that are in the system already, but we have them for a planned work for a kit, are we going to use the ones that just we received? Are we going to pull the ones that were in the storeroom, use those in the kit, and then replace those that we ordered with the work order back into the storeroom? Are you following me here? That way you have good turns within your storeroom for FIFO, first in, first out. But you can actually, to your point, your kits, all of your work should be planned ahead. Your tools, your parts, and everything in the storeroom and the planning department have to work hand in hand to accomplish the task. And that is identifying the parts that are for that job task. And sometimes the storerooms can really help with the planners to ensure the right parts at the right time, lowest cost. So that's where the storeroom plays in with planned work.
Great point, Radar. Thank you.
Yep.
Ready work is work that has been prepared for execution. Necessary planning has been done. Materials procured. In other words, we've got it. I just call it eyes on part. The planner's got eyes on parts. The parts are here, and the labor requirements have been estimated. Stock out. Inventory request is a stock out. If the requested item is normally stocked on site, an inventory request for the normal quantity of the item, but the inventory on hand is insufficient to fill the request. In other words, we've got what it's telling us is that we requested it, but it's normally supposed to be stocked, but it's not there. It's a stock out. People don't like to track it, but I tell you got to track stock out. Radar, do you have many stock outs in your plants?
We did years ago until we actually, whenever I came on board, started tracking that matrix. And it was so important. And that's where cycle counting comes into play as well, to ensure those, because you'll see when you do cycle countings, if the system says that there's two and you go in there and there's only one, and you adjust your inventory accordingly, especially if it hits the reorder point. But that will actually be broadcasted as a stock out as well. So it's really good, especially in a lot of CMMS systems, whenever you're doing cycle counting, that you can see stock outs before they're actually, I should say, a stock out. So that's a proactive way that the storeroom can work to eliminate stock out as much as possible. And Ricky, real quick, someone asked, or Russell Thomas asked, how secure a storeroom should be. I said secured. Would you like to elaborate on how I say secured?
Secure means that, no one could go in that's not supposed to be in there. They shouldn't have access to it. If it's a maintenance technician and you have a card key system, what should happen is they swipe their card, and there should be some type of alarm that goes off, or noise or a light or something, and then they got to close the door when they go in. Because if they don't do that, if they don't keep it secure like that, then vagrants will come in. People will stand away. Probably none of you have ever seen this. I have seen this, okay? In fact, when I was a technician, I did do it one time, but I didn't do it again. Stand back in the shadows and wait for somebody to come check the part out because you didn't want to write the work order, okay? Not good. So
secured.
Secure.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
I like cameras too. I like cameras and alarms. All right. So inventory accuracy, inventory cycle counting process that identifies discrepancies in inventory levels and correct inventory level inventory quantities before those items are requisitioned for an equipment repair. This inventory accuracy, we talked about this, is a big deal. And all you do is go in and take so many parts and you just verify what it says. Typically, what I used to do we did it with my technicians at first with the storeroom attendants, but hopefully the storeroom attendants did the inventory accuracy because they got good at it. But at first, they weren't very good at it because they never did it before. So I had to use one of my best technicians to go in and show them how to do it. But I had to educate my technician how to do it first. The target for an MRO storeroom should be overall inventory accuracy at 95% of total cycle counts. Whew. Where's yours at, Radar?
Company-wide, we're over 80%, but we're still not at 95%. And I wanted to go back to that inventory accuracy. A lot of times it's where someone will put a part back in the wrong drawer, the wrong cubby. It'll be 2 cubbies over or 3 cubbies over. So it's very important that this comes back to labeling locations and make sure everything has a location within the storeroom. And Russell asked again, the success of a storeroom depends on the layout. That is so true, Russell,
Absolutely.
because you have to, and we're going to get into the layout here in just a minute, but I will say this: out of 8 storerooms, 5 of our storerooms are in the 90s, but then we have a couple low, offenders. But we're working on it.
Yeah, it's always a work in progress, especially when management changes too.
Yep.
All right. So some guiding principles: controlled access, 24/7. And what I mean by controlled access, the things we've been talking about. That's all. Card key system.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ricky, but while
ahead.
we were on cycle count, Jason wanted us to define cycle count. Here it is. Let's say that you have 6,000 SKUs within your storeroom. That's all your bearings, your seals, so many different line items with internal numbers that you have set up in your system. Let's say you have 6,000. We'll show you how we break it down in ABC coding here in just a few slides. But if you have 6,000 SKUs within your system, you're going to be counting about 27 SKUs a day, and that's 340 days out of the year. I give vacations and stuff like that. But you want to at least count so many SKUs every day, and you'll count so many A's, so many B's, so many C's, and the system will auto-generate those based on the purchase time and the cycle count, whether it's A, B, or C. So that's why we do cycle counting. By the end of the year, you will have done a complete inventory of all of your parts within your storeroom. Instead of doing it one physical inventory at the end of the year, which is okay, but if you have 6,000 line items, it takes a long time to do a complete physical inventory. So what we do is we break that into increments, and I like to break it in day by day. It's really easy to go up there and count 10 SKUs or 20 SKUs, whatever it is, to ensure that they are correct, and then move on to the next day. So that's the definition of cycle counting.
Yeah, I used to have my technicians, I'd pick one for the week, and he could make cycle count, like an hour or 2 hours a day. That's all. And it worked well because it helped them understand what's going on in the storeroom too.
Great questions, by the way. Sorry to keep interrupting you.
No, man, I like it. I like it. The questions are where people learn.
Yep.
Not death by PowerPoint, for sure. This interaction is great.
Yep.
Let's talk about some storeroom guiding principles. Controlled access 24/7. That doesn't mean this lock where no one can get in there, just control access. Min-max reorder points used to manage parts in order to mitigate stockouts, like we've been talking about. Stockouts are managed and considered unacceptable. So if our stockouts are high, we got a problem, and we need to do a root cause analysis of it to determine what that is. First in, last out when checking out parts. No used parts or materials are stored unless they've been restored to manufacturer's specifications. I think that's a big deal. We don't want used stuff in the storeroom. There's nothing wrong with a used item if it's been rebuilt and it's been verified, like a motor. Mm-hmm. This is just a short one. Just a metric down below dashboard. Targeting and trending down for critical part turns. Stockouts, critical spares at 10%. Red. Target trending down. Parts, FedEx, UPS, overnight delivery costs. That's a big one. I mean, if you just have to track one cost, that the overnight delivery cost, unless you're really proactive, don't worry about it. But that trend will tell you something, what's going on in the plant. Because if it starts trending up, you got a big reliability problem which is systemic throughout the organization.
And if you like data as much as I do, I like tracking expedited costs. Reason being is a lot of times you can look at it, was it electrical or mechanical? And you can break that down into buckets, and you can see if you're expediting more electrical items, then you can start doing a more root cause analysis. Number one, somebody hasn't really completed a bill of materials for a piece of machinery, or all of our electrical components really need to be reevaluated. And the reason why that is certain PLCs and drives and things like that get updated all the time. And a lot of times we don't update the storeroom with the new equipment that's coming into the building or the new upgrades that have come into the building. We still have yesteryear stuff in our storeroom. Anyway, go ahead, Ricky.
Well, one thing you just brought up too, just come to my mind. Yeah, I'm thinking about companies that, they replace their equipment. Say that they got a production line, they decided they're going to replace one large component out of that line, one large machine. And then the parts, when they pull it out, we need to have a configuration management program that we look at the parts that are in there. And if they're only assigned to that machine, those parts need to be pulled out of inventory, not left in inventory. Otherwise, the inventory keeps to get bigger and bigger and bigger as we start swapping out our equipment.
And that's where the bill of materials, part of your functional locations in your system, your CMMS system that has all of your equipment, the hierarchy of your equipment. When you get down from your parent equipment down to your children, which, are the parts and everything, to Ricky's point, if you're replacing a complete machine, if those parts that were originally tied to that machine, you also need to fix it within your system and replace with the upgraded parts, but actually remove the parts. And somebody asked me something, Ricky, and I want to give someone that may be thinking about it. When you go to remove the parts out of your storeroom because they are now obsolete, the best thing that I have found in my career is to actually create a work order against the storeroom and issue those parts against the storeroom, and then put the action code of why obsolete or whatever. So at the end of the year, I can pull the storeroom as an equipment number, a code, right? And see what I've issued out of the storeroom. Don't do a cycle count because that will mess you up. Do an actual issue out of the storeroom. So go ahead, Ricky. It's just best practice that no one really talks about.
Great point. I've always wondered that myself. So some contributing factors, the spare part problem. This is called an A3 or 11 by 17 sheet of paper, basically. So if we look at contributing factors to spare parts or problems, we get to the measurements, the stockouts, cost, delays. We need to measure have the right metrics in place. That's why I like the SMRP metrics, because they've got a lot of metrics in there for spare parts in the storeroom. Materials, we got to have the right material. We got to have the right lubricants, the right part. I mean, we've got to have the things that we order and not a substitute. If the substitute, if you got parts that require no substitute, then it needs to be in your CMMS that says no substitute. Because sometimes purchasing tries to find a better price, or somebody calls them, says, hey, let's go to lunch, and they go to lunch with them. Next thing you know, they're taking they're selling them substandard parts. Personnel, all processes mapped and executed with discipline. Everyone trained to specific tasks, roles and responsibilities defined. Environment in the storeroom, it's about security, it's about humidity, it's about specifications. Methods, we measure. When I'm talking about methods, the storeroom, how we manage the storeroom, or a process of checking out parts and so on, it's got to be measured. And I like to have people what they call task qualified. Task qualified means I've got a strict criteria, like it could be a technician or it could be a storeroom attendant. These are their tasks that they're supposed to be qualified in. Are they competent in those tasks or not? Yes or no? And then they need to have procedures, how things should be done. Otherwise, everybody does whatever they want to do when they want to do it. We got to have procedure. We got to follow procedures, because otherwise we're humans. We're full of error, for one thing, but we also want to do what we want to do. And then the assets, maintain the specification, operate the specification. We got the right parts. All that's left is maintain and operate.
I would like to also say, when you guys map out your processes, believe it or not, if you could actually print those out and put them on a board, or if you have an electronic board that you can actually have your processes laid out. And I even have them broken down by shift, the responsibility. So when we're not in a reactive mode, like this or something broke down, our storeroom people will be doing X. If they are doing X and they're all of a sudden it's an emergency, they need to stop what they're doing. And I have processes written down, but it's documented and it's actually posted on the board as a reminder of what we need to do. And it's really simplified. It's a real color coded, real pretty thing. So pictures paint 1,000 words for people, it really does. Instead of having, one thing you don't want to do is hand a bunch of papers to your storeroom people and say, hey, read this. This is what I want you to do. Make it simple. Put it on a nice flow chart and say, here's what it is. It's very important. That's where a lot of people miss, Ricky. They train, they give somebody saying, here, this is your job. And then that goes into file 13 and then it's lost. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. No, that's a great point. That's a great point because, part of this mapping the process is a big deal. Storeroom, whether it's parts checkout, whether it's cycle counting, whatever, we need to have process maps that actually map that out. And it's not complex. It's very simple. You could probably download them off the internet. They're not hard to find. Requirements for success. Oh, let me back up a minute. One of the things I used to say that in the storeroom, one of the things I like to see, and I've seen them in a number of companies, is that they had a barcode. I mean, when you walk up to the storeroom, if you order a part, you go to CMMS. When you go in, you use their card key to get into the storeroom, and then you have to close it because there's an alarm that goes off when you open it up. You close it so vagrants don't come in. And then when you go in and you find a part, because you've already looked it up in the CMS, you know the location, you pick it up, you go back out, you scan it again, and then it's now the part is checked out against the work order, charged to the asset. And then you leave the room.
And you can streamline it even more now with RFID, radio frequency ID identifications. Like if you guys are in a store and you hear that beeping noise as you're walking out, like somebody stealing something, you can actually tag, not every part, but you can actually tag a lot of the like really important high dollar items. You can tag those. So if they go out, they will be timestamp checked out against the CMMS. And to Ricky's point, if you have cameras, you can always go back. But we can get into that at a later time. I'd really want to do a whole thing on RFID tagging in the new.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
All right. So requirements for success of inventory control: secure storeroom 24/7. Doesn't matter if somebody's in there or not. It needs to be locked. All parts charged in a work order, which is assigned to a specific asset. Not having a blanket work order you charge all your parts to. Some companies do that. Believe it or not, they still do that.
Yes, they do.
It over 30 years. This is crazy.
Do not just charge it to a cost center, because here's the reason why. And sometimes someone, when they're talking, they say, hey, you need to make sure you check out parts against a work order. The reason why we do that is for asset stratification at the end of the year from engineering design. Is we want to know how much money we are spending on our equipment, our assets, and we can stratify those for the most expenditures with parts and labor all the way down the board. And then that way we can see if we need a redesign or if we're having some other issues down the line. So it's really important that every part that's in your storeroom from a reliability aspect is checked out against a piece of equipment. Because from what I do now is I do stratification of all of our equipment. And then I can, if you have like equipment, if you're a really big company and you have like equipment in other areas, you can see if a particular OEM is maybe had a bad design or something to that effect. And you can bring that to light with information straight out of the CMMS when we're checking out parts.
I've seen that before.
Yep.
Vendor having a problem. You were very soft with that one.
I'm trying. Hey, it's Monday. I'm trying to be positive Monday here.
I know you're a positive guy, man. No remote stores that is not controlled. In other words, we can have remote stores, but they still have to be controlled. We still have to control access to them and make sure the parts are charged to an asset.
MRO stands for maintenance, repair, and operations. Okay. Right. Felix asked. Go ahead, Ricky. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm trying to answer questions as people are asking.
All right. No hidden spares. This is a legal tax issue, especially in the U.S. and Canada. It's a tax issue. You don't have hidden spares. They got to be controlled. We got to know what we have in stock. If they're controlled in stock, that's fine. But if they're hidden and they're not charged into CMMS and not in the CMMS, we got a problem. Preferred barcode scanner. Scan part, scan work order, download information into CMMS. Just take a barcode scanner, scan, put it in a saddle, walk out. Or like Upkeep has this the software on their CMMS where you got the barcode on your cell phone. I mean, you could scan the part, scan the work order on your cell phone because the work order is already in your cell phone, which is pretty cool.
Yep. Hey, going back to remote stores and hidden spares and all that. Craig Adams asked, about the actual physical location. And Craig, I've done storerooms all over the world, from way up above the Arctic Circle and remote areas. And I have to tell you, one of the big things that I have seen, and you've already documented it, is people keeping their storeroom parts, especially big motors and gearboxes, sitting outside in the elements, getting rusty, or in a trailer that really, is leaking, or it's getting really, really cold outside, or it's getting really, really hot outside. That has detrimental effects and that causes forced deterioration whenever we have our parts, the rubber seals or the it's really, really bad. So if anybody has parts that are in a remote area that are not in the CMMS system, or they're not temperature controlled to a point. Now, it doesn't have to be like in your bedroom kind of temperature controlled, but you don't want to have a lot of extremes. And I have seen people that have from 0 Celsius, up to 100 Celsius, or if you want to do Fahrenheit. So it's really important that we spend a lot of money. I don't know if everyone realizes this, but there's billions of dollars spent worldwide on MRO, and it's one of the most mismanaged aspects of a business. And that's what Ricky and I have been trying to communicate to everyone. And when you see something like Craig has mentioned about motors and gearbox sitting outside, some are in a carport or just out in the elements, you might as well just go ahead and get rid of those.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Ricky.
Just take a gun and shoot it, because it's gonna die.
Put it out of its
misery.
and we kind of smile and jest about this, but as someone that's in the reliability field, I'm not just an MRO guy. I'm big time into the reliability aspect of things. If you have a breakdown and you want, this is where Ricky was talking about, like new parts, and you go and grab that motor that's been sitting out in the rain, that's never been turned, it's been, it's rusting, the windings, and you go to put that in, it may run, but how long? Are we going to get the whole PF life expectancy and the PF curve of life expectancy for this motor? Probably not. And it's going to cause more damage. And actually, there's safety issues involved there as well. So that's why it's so important. If you're going to spend the money on these parts, take care of them. Go ahead, Ricky.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm passionate about it, man.
Yeah, and rotate those shafts, man. 1 1/4 turns. Preferred barcode scanner, scan part, scan work order, download the information to CMS. Like I said, just some KPIs. Inventory turnover rate, is it increasing or decreasing? What's the trend? I need to know that. Stockouts less than 5%. So what's the stockout? It says in the computer is there. You go to, it's not there. It should be 95% plus. That's world class. Inventory accuracy. So we check our inventory. We should be above 95%. Now, what did you say yours was, Radar? 80 something?
Yeah, we're right around the 90 range. But it's I tell you, you guys can make giant leaps from the 20s and 30s up to about 80 or 90. But when you start talking about those last 5 percentage points, it's like pulling teeth. It's really hard to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Slow moving parts. Why do we care about slow moving parts? Why do we care about that, Radar?
Well, that's a good point. We have rarely used inventory and obsolescence. If we have a lot of money tied up in slow moving parts, we need to reaffirm that we have the right parts in our storeroom, so we're not taking up the foot space that we need, the square foot space that we need. That's why it's really important.
We got a vendor close by that can store it for us.
For vendor managed inventory, absolutely.
Emergency purchases, I think this is a big one to me. It's, I've seen this in so many companies. First thing I do when we talk about the store and what's the overnight cost you're spending? Because I can't get how much when you call a vendor and say, hey, I need a part right now. And they say, how bad do you need it, man? So I need it real bad. Okay, that means they just push the button for the higher percentage that they'll get. But overnight, these emergency purchases, we need to capture it. Freight, I'm talking about UPS, FedEx, whatever you're using, DHL, whatever you're using. Back orders should be less than 5%. That means we align with our vendors. Our vendors know what we're doing, and they know what our expectations are. Now, vendor efficiency. Okay. So, any of you ever seen this metric before? On-time percentage. This is a vendor. What we're doing, we're going to measure them. On time, what percent of time they deliver the part on time? What percent of the time they deliver the right quantity? And what percentage of the time they deliver the right part? We want to be 90% plus. Does anybody do that? Just text it. Yes or no?
I will say this. Good. We had a yes. I will say this. You don't have to do all of your vendors. I would do the top 5 who financially speaking, or the importance of those vendors are. I would definitely do those, to the point of not only taking their word for it, but actually going, if you can, to their facility to do an on-site audit.
Well, on-site audit. That brings up a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I got a checklist for going to motor rebuild shops, and it's just unbelievable the stuff we found. Learned that with Cargill. Yeah, unbelievable. All right. So vendor owned inventory percentage less than 5%. Sometimes vendor owned inventory works, but that's a financial need there. So let's talk about what good storeroom looks like. It's clean and organized. We got the right part. We have the right part at the right time. Secure 24/7, like I mentioned before. All parts are charged on asset of work order. Psycho County monthly. So Psycho County. Why don't you give us yours on Psycho County? Radar. I know you got a better example. Definition they have down there. What's the Psycho County?
The technique, as I mentioned to, I think it was Russell earlier or whomever, is just count certain parts every day. I wouldn't even wait a month. You can count 10 or 12 or 10 to 20 SKUs every day, and then you have a complete physical inventory at the end of the year. And your CMMS system will definitely set it up for you when you set up your parts ABC, and we'll talk about ABC in a minute. It will tell you which parts to count that day. So
okay,
that's
the reason
what
I asked
counting.
Radar to say this again is because I think it's important for us to do this the way Radar is talking about. That's the only way we're ever going to get out of where we're at right now. Adequate conditioned air for specific assets, parts, and components. If we got some certain types of items, we need to have it in conditioned air to be able to maintain it. So when we pull it out of stock and we have to install it somewhere, it is to specification. One could be like V belts. I'm gonna throw this out. If you got V belts and you've got let's say you have in a very dry environment or a very humid environment, some of those belts probably need to be in a humidity controlled area, especially if it's on the critical assets. I'm talking about, I've seen conveyor belts installed on the system that fail prematurely because their spare conveyor belt broke within 24 hours. And I can tell you, I knew it before they even put it on, because you could see the belt was just flat worn out, from being stored for 20 years. And finally, they needed to use it. It doesn't make sense.
And also, so it's not just the temperature of control. Remember, ozone has a huge effect on rubber, and also ultraviolet. Your fluorescent lighting. So I've walked into many storerooms. They'll have all their belts hanging, and they'll be right under fluorescent lights. And when you do an ozone check, their belts are deteriorating faster. And this all is something that we need to look at. But if we have motors sitting out in the rain, I think belts being under fluorescent lights are the least of your worries. So attack one thing at a time.
Crawl before you walk. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Large horsepower motors, 50 horsepower larger. Shaft should be turned monthly 1 1/4 turns. We used to have a magnet on ours. What you would do is you put it on the shaft and make sure you rotate it all 1 1/4 turns. Reason why you want to do 1 1/4 turn, but if you turn it just 360, you could also get a flat spot on that motor. So it's best to just go 1 1/4 turns. That's all. Mm-hmm. Fast moving parts at the front, like Radar mentioned. You want them at the front of the storeroom, not somewhere hidden in the back. I got to go all the way to back for a fast moving part. Secure kitting area separate for scheduled work. I want the parts pulled out of stock and put it in a kitted area for the planner scheduler. Planner schedule plans it, schedules it, And then when the way it works is the kitted area is locked on that morning that the work's going to be executed to schedule work. Then the maintenance supervisor unlocks the storeroom, not the planner, the supervisor does. There should be work orders attached to each part or parts. It should be like if you got number parts for one job, it may be a pallet or 2 pallets, but it has the work order on those pallets. That way, the technician's not walking around trying to figure out what he needs. He walks in, he takes the fork truck, picks it up, or just picks it up, puts it in the bucket, whatever he does, and walks out. That way, he knows where the parts are. So the work order matches the work orders already on the parts in the kitted area. And I want the kitted area locked 24/7. 7 habits of effective maintenance storeroom leader. Okay, sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings on this one. Okay. Ensure all maintenance parts are checked out or charged to an asset via maintenance work order. We talk about no work order, no parts. Monitor storeroom leading and lag KPIs. Make decisions based on data. Make decisions based on data. And again, we want the storeroom secure. Apply technology to use it. We need to have those barcoding and handheld devices. Attend the scheduling meeting. It doesn't hurt for the storeroom leader once in a while just to sit in a maintenance scheduling meeting to understand how this whole process works. Bring in vendors, provide free training to maintenance technicians. I used to do it with my guys, and I'll tell you what, it was very effective because it was them hearing from me things that we needed to do was different than hearing it from somebody on the outside. And I tell you, if you got like a lubrication supplier, they provide lubricants to your plant. They got somebody that can come in, maybe just a salesperson, come in with these brochures and hand it out to everybody. I did it every week when I was a maintenance supervisor. I'd bring somebody different in with something new. And always they bring a box of donuts or something in too. So that way I get my guys excited. Rebuild items are shipped to the rebuild facility within 48 hours. That's what a good storeroom leader does. All right. So what it indicates of poor storeroom practices, housekeeping is one of the first indicators how storeroom is running. If the aisles are cluttered, disorganized, stocks in the bins are not rotated to allow first in, first out, packages are torn, show leakage, it indicates the storage and care is not happening. I've seen this too many times. Yeah, man, you ought to see our storeroom. I said, okay, I want to go to your storeroom and look at your motors. I didn't put the pictures on here. Okay, I thought about it, but I'd have to go to the president of the company to get it. But he wanted me to evaluate the storeroom. I went to the storeroom, and they had motors that were taken off of equipment, and they didn't even know where the motors went. I said, why don't you throw the motors away? So because we're unsure. I said, why don't you send them out to have them rebuilt? So we don't have the money for that. Okay, forget it. They're too far gone for me to figure that out. If you have a stock house on a recurring basis, the stock is not showing in inventory, it's an indication of poor inventory management. If you're experiencing expedites for material already on order, it's an indication that either the supplier not meeting their due dates or the buyers are not paying attention to your needs. I want a vendor to know we got to have a good relationship. Parts and materials are not charged to the work order asset. All parts must be checked out to storeroom and charged to an asset. No kidding, all. It's amazing to me. How do you schedule work without kidding a part? Otherwise, the maintenance person goes to the storeroom in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, work starts, goes to the storeroom to find a part. There's no part, or he can't find a part. The job's supposed to start at production's got the line down at 7:15. And we're at 7 o'clock trying to find a part in the storeroom, and we'll finally find a part maybe by 8 o'clock. Production's still down. Doesn't make sense.
I want to talk about one of my pet peeves on poor storeroom practices, Ricky.
All right, go ahead.
We issue a part to a work order. That part, let's say it's a I/O board, goes out to the job site. It travels all the way across the plant. It's bumped around. It's whatever. Oh, we don't need that I/O board. Put it back in the storeroom. It's not in an anti-static bag or anything like that. So the magnetic
field,
field that the I/O board has been transferred over and around and through could have damaged that I/O board. But one of the pet peeves I have is a lot of the special electrical items that are going out on the plant floor. If they're being returned because, hey, we didn't use it, now you're going to have a return process to understand, do we want to put this is there jeopardy of putting this back into stock?
Yeah.
So that's one of my pet peeves. And real quick, so Russell asked, hey, what about closing work orders, the parts that were issued out? And I will say this, once a part is issued to a work order, okay, that work order can remain open until you TCO it out or close it or whatever you call it. But once you issue that part against a work order, it already sets up the procurement process in the background to, hey, it's hit the reorder point. So great question, Russell.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ricky.
All right, good. The benefits of having a clean and efficient storeroom. When your storeroom is clean and runs efficiently at lower cost, the company can recognize more revenue, no doubt about it. Because they got the right part at the right time. But what other benefits are there? One of the things, we can find parts faster. You'll spend less on labor wasted and looking for lost or missing parts. Also, by accelerating the overall MRO process, you have less downtime of valuable equipment and operators. We don't have equipment. We don't have operators standing around waiting on the equipment to run because we're waiting on the part. Lower freight, shipping, handling costs. You'll lower these costs because you won't be ordering parts you already have, and you'll have less expedited rush shipping costs. I tell you, when PLCs first come out and servo valves, proportional valves, and a lot of them were being made overseas. It became a challenge. Let's put it that way. And I was a maintenance manager. I needed a hydraulic pump that was made in Germany. And it so happens we didn't have overnight delivery at that time or expedited as I call it. So basically what I did was I called Delta Airlines and asked them they have a plane leaving in Frankfurt, Germany at this date, at this time. I need this part on that plane. And they said, well, we don't do that on our plane. I said, okay, then I'll buy all of first class out. Okay. I want to pay for all of first class for that one part, that one pump. And they're like, you're crazy. I know I'm crazy, but I need that pump. I've got a plant shutdown. It's costing us thousands of dollars an hour. I need that part. You can have it here in 8 hours. There's none nowhere else. And they did it. They shipped it to me. They charged me for all first class, but they still probably have people first class. But you got to think out of the box sometimes. It's probably not a good thing to do. Okay. Less inventory carrying costs. You can shrink your inventory parts by determining what's obsolete and unnecessary. As time goes on, you'll order and stock only the biggest, what has the biggest impact on operations. Maximize the use of available space by reorganizing and removing unnecessary parts. Like Radar mentioned, you'll have room to make more workspace more efficient. You might even be able to reclaim some of the area and use it for income producing purposes.
Right. And also it's a safer area. You're not tripping over things. Things are not falling on you. One of the years ago, I saw a very large pneumatic cylinder that was placed incorrectly up on a shelf, and it rolled off and it hit our storeroom person in the back because they did not store it properly. So that's why the part of the clean and efficient storeroom is for safety as well.
I was talking about when I worked for Alcoa, and I worked in the rebuild shop with our maintenance engineer. Well, he oversaw it, and we rebuilt everything. That we didn't send anything out for rebuild except for motors. And I tell you what, you learn a lot when you go through that process about having the right parts, how you handle parts, and all that. It was incredible, eye-opening to me. And our storeroom was secure 24/7. It was not manned 24/7, but we had millions of dollars of inventory. But people knew when you went to the storeroom that night that you knew how you had to get it out of the storeroom, and had to be accurate or you'd lose your job. Condition of employment, they called it.
And Ricky, I know you have many more slides, but I think we need to touch on this real quick. There is a difference between rarely used inventory and obsolete inventory. It's very important for us to understand rarely used inventory is something that you have to have on your shelf for insurance purposes. It could be a giant fuse for your panel or whatever the case may be. You may not use it in 5 years, but you don't want to take it out of your storeroom because it's an insurance spare. There is a huge difference between rarely used inventory, or RUI is what we call it, and obsolete inventory. So make sure that you have definitions posted on what the difference of inventory is. Okay.
Yeah, you got to, anytime you take anything out of storeroom, you got to have some type of process, change management process that's got to go through it. We don't want to be checking stuff out that you're talking about, taking it out and doing away with it when we need it. Somebody may not need it's needed. We never checked it out before.
Yep, and we had a question about what is considered a critical spare. Critical spare, we use what we call the RIME code, the ranking index of maintenance expenditures, and it's the same way we rank our equipment out on the floor. So that's where the ranking, you take the lead time, the cost, the specialty of the part, will it shut down certain areas? There's a ranking. There's actually a matrix, and I'm pretty sure Ricky can share that matrix with you, or I will. But each part
you can
is
email
different.
Either one of us, and we'll send it to you.
Right. Each part is different definition for a critical spare, depending on where it is and what it pertains to. So yeah, go ahead, Ricky. Sorry.
No, it's good. So we need to have goals and objectives, for the storeroom. What should they be? So what we started thinking about a goal. What would be a goal of your storeroom? I'm thinking off the top of my head to have the right part at the right time. I think that would be a big one. And then I also want it secure. The objective is may not be secure now. We need to have it secure. Personnel, do you staff your storeroom 24/7, or is there a process in place where all parts are kept secure? You don't have to have a storeroom attendant 24/7. You just got to control access to it. And we got the technology to do that. We've had it a long time. So technology is your current CMMS, have all parts assigned to specific asset. Now, I'm asking this to everybody. What percentage of your parts are tagged to an asset? Everybody text it in. Text in what you got, just off the top of your head. I know you may not know exactly, but just give us, is it less than 5%, or is it 100%, or whatever?
Yeah. We have 100% because we do the complete bill of materials, and if that bill of materials happens to change because of outdated equipment, I remove that out of the bill of materials and insert the new one. So every part that is in our storeroom is tied to an asset. You could have the same part, like a 6002 2RS bearing, that is tied to several assets. Believe me, each asset will have that part tied to it. So it's very important that every part that's in the storeroom is tied to an asset. It could be multiple assets, but at least it's tied to an asset.
All right. What did people chat in?
They said 30%, 82%, and 10%.
Okay. That's what I expect. Security is storm locked or controlled 24/7. I beat this one to death. Okay. So how to be proactive in store through evaluation? What's the best way to be proactive and evaluate a storeroom? What do you think it should be? Well, the best way to evaluate is to walk through it daily and review a list of items based on, you mentioned this, Radar. Okay, I've got just 10 part numbers of verified CMS versus actual. What's the variance from the CMS to on-hand balance? Not a big deal. I mean, I had a work order that I'd write for my technician, be planned and scheduled for a technician to do that. And order management, how many orders are able to be filled and meet daily requirements? Review the orders produced from the day before and note the number of shortages. In other words, we need these parts. How many of them we didn't have the parts? And I'll tell you, if planning and schedule is working well, you don't need to be concerned about that, because planning will have ordered the parts or secured the parts, and they're ready when the job is to be made. Look at your kitting staging area. Are the kits being filled daily, rotating daily, or are they just lingering for a week or more? I've seen kitting areas where they've got parts that have been sitting in there for a long time, like motors that got so much dust on them. It's like incredible. I'm like, how long has that motor been waiting to be put on? Well, it's for a shutdown. Yeah. How long has it been sitting there? 2 years. But we're waiting on I don't get it. I mean, so how often do you rotate the shaft? We don't rotate the shaft. Okay. Never mind.
Hey, Ricky, this is where the synergy between the planning, maintenance planners and the storeroom really comes into play. Is the kitting areas should be with the schedule itself. So if we have a 3-week schedule, the kitting areas should reflect that. And Heather just jumped on. She's going to kick us out, I think.
I had a 2-week schedule in mind. I just didn't have enough room
I
to go any further.
I think Heather's going to kick us out.
We still have most of our audience here. I think you guys can keep going a little bit over if you both have the time, but I do want to just flag that it is the top of the hour now. But Radar, you've been doing an awesome job kind of, answering.
I'll move on. I got it. Before you dive in and start fixing things, it's better to first set some goals and priorities based on your company's immediate needs and resources, number of storeroom SKUs you have, production and maintenance schedules, the activity level of each shift, number of maintenance personnel you can devote to this project. It is going to take resources if your storeroom is broke. Establish a baseline. Make sure you capture current state of storeroom with photos, report data. I got some great photos on them. You know, it'll scare you to death and so forth. If possible, have your storeroom your MRO baseline evaluated. This makes it easier way, how far you've come and the return on your investment. So how good are we moving things in the right direction? I can tell you when you start moving, changing the storeroom, especially if you're reactive, the costs are going to go up before they go down. Storeroom, we talked about a lot of this stuff here. Making sure we have the right things in the storeroom and make sure we measure the performance of it. Okay. This is vendor managed inventory. This is just an SMRP metric. If you remember SMRP, it's great to use these definitions and modify them to fit your need. But so vendor managed inventory, so this measures the ratio of number of stock items measured, the individual stock units of SKUs that are managed by a vendor or supplier, then to the total number. So what percentage of my total number are vendor managed? Okay. Inactive stock metric calculates the ratio of number of inactive maintenance, repair, and operating inventory stock records against the total number. An objective of this metric is to measure percentage of non-critical MRO supply stock when no use is over 12 months. All right. So I'm just going to give you just some more metrics, just stock outs. I just say with these metrics, you need to have the metrics. I like a maintenance gimbal walk. I'm going to use it as fast. A gimbal walk, I know Radar uses them. Give an opportunity for the maintenance staff to stand back from day-to-day tasks all through the store and facility to identify wasteful activities. I used to like to do it. I did it once a year. I didn't do it all the time, but I think once a quarter is good to have them. But have a good checklist for them, And the 6 X's of storeroom. So I'm moving kind of fast here. Okay, just setting the 5S. Okay, this is 6S. Okay, so we got, Sexu, I guess is how you say it. The sort, remove items, remove parts which are no longer used. We don't have the machines anymore. We need to get rid of the parts, straight and organize, sort and store parts based on ABC analysis. Say so or scrub, clean everything, keep all parts, store them clean, climate control. Then standardize, eliminate redundant parts, fast turn-in parts, part types, stored in area, and qualified vendors, not lowest bidder. And then just sustain, expand the process, move it to other storerooms you have. Securities of 6S, control access, secure all parts from cameras, secure access via employee card. Still got time? How many people we got on the line still?
I would just like to say that any questions that we did not answer, because we have quite a few, I tried to answer as much as I possibly could. Heather, are you going to be able to communicate to everyone that they can talk to us offline or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think probably the most streamlined place to ask and answer questions will be on this thread where the webinar goes live tomorrow in the community. Okay. But I can start a special thread or a special, chat to continue this conversation since it's been such a fruitful one. Great content, Ricky. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the great questions, man. A lot of great engagement. Love it. Yeah. Sounds like we might very soon. So
give everybody my email address too, so in case they need to contact me. And I can get them in contact with Radar if they need to.
Definitely. I like this one question that just came in from Joshua, maybe to close us out, giving some people a key takeaway, I think. So Josh says, there's so much to consider, Joshua, excuse me. What are the top 3 best practices an organization should undertake first?
From an MRO standpoint?
I believe so.
Okay. From an MRO standpoint, the best thing to do, number 1, you gotta straighten up and clean your entire storeroom, because before you even do a physical count to understand what you have, you definitely have to attack that. And while you're attacking that, if you don't have a fence or some kind of secured area, fencing's pretty cheap. You can even get a lock and a chain if need be. You can really attack those top things. But the biggest thing that you want to do is straighten your storeroom out. That way you can identify all the parts that are there. Then you start working through the 6S that Ricky was talking about, identifying the parts. And what you do is you can start matching those parts to assets. And if you don't have an asset that's out there on the line with a part, then you have to do some investigative work. And that's a lot of obsolescence reveal that you will have. But that's your top three. And one thing that I haven't hit is the training of our storeroom people. We really didn't touch on that tonight. But if you do not train, we have a lot of great people out in the industry that you can train in material management for MRO. I would suggest you go to the Society of Maintenance Reliability Professionals, and they have a lot of good training there. That's a SMRP. You can go there and you can pick up training. That's the best place that I would go.
Yeah, and there's some good vendors out there to do it well too. But you can contact me or Radar. We could send you to somebody. And we don't get money from these vendors, okay?
Yep.
We want to get to the right person.
And real quick, Felix, A items are your most critical items, okay? They make up 70% of your monetary amount, but only 10% of your storeroom inventory. Your B items are like your seals, bearings, and things of that nature, okay? They make up about 20% of your storeroom inventory. But they're really not cost a lot, and they're easily obtained. And in your C items, we look at as pretty much consumables. They're very low cost. They're easily gathered. So and they have a lot of movement. So A items are most critical. You have to have them for insurance spares, or they cost a lot of money, or they take a long time to get it there. B items are a lot of your switches, your sensors, and things like that. And then your C items are very low cost. You can go and get them anywhere. They're easily accessible. So that's where the ABC Pareto chart comes from. Okay, that was Felix said, please answer before you close.
All right. Good.
Thank you so much, our engaged audience. Wonderful questions. Keep it going in Slack. I'll be sure to make clear a point where Radar and Ricky will check for any further questions. Radar and Ricky, thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you.
Wonderful conversation with you both tonight.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good evening.
Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you all next time.
See you.
See you, Radar.
See you, bub.